suitable co-op, PEY, or internship placement. And let's go. So first of all, I want you to think about a question. Are you choosing or are you chosen? Well, some of you might be thinking, of course, well, it's a combination of both, but here's my thought to it. There's ordering. So when should you apply to a position? First of all, you want to consider, do you make the baseline requirements? Are you actually physically qualified? They're looking for a junior, you're a junior. Are they looking for a senior? Well, you're a junior, you wouldn't qualify, if that makes sense. And second, of course, that's quite not very meaningful. But secondly, are you actually likely to receive an interview? Now, this is the question that you should ask yourself before any application. Are you actually technically qualified? Do you have the skills that they're looking for? And after you've determined that, will this placement actually help you for the future? Is it what you want to do for your career? Will it help other companies be willing to accept you technically, etc.? And after that, what do others think? Sometimes you should ask around. And later, do you actually want this job? Once you've actually made it through all 5 questions, well, you probably have a good placement. Now let's get to the first part. How do you actually evaluate yourself? How do you determine that you're technically qualified? Here's a actual full-time application from the Waterloo's hiring management site. And I know it's not very readable, but my point is you should focus on the first question first. Are you actually technically qualified? Well, this one is actually looking for level and the required skills. Level is bachelor's, and well, it's a graduate job. And the required skills I'm about to get into. So this one specifically, this is a clip of the initial screenshot. This one's looking for 2+ years of experience, some types of languages, some types of software, some types of 90s APIs because they're working on that, and bonus interest in APIs, no code, and developer tools. Well, most of that doesn't really make any sense, but once you get the hang of it, you should identify the core aspects of what they're looking for. For example, this one, languages and software. That's it. I've had highlighted in red there. And here's an example of a different company, one that you might be more familiar with. This one is Huawei Technologies. This is a Canadian site, Markham. And they're looking for C++, which is actually quite common. And of course, that doesn't really differentiate most people out of the, they don't block people out of the interview. So you should look at what they're actually looking for that differentiates you between others. So the second point says, satisfy at least one of the following. What they actually mean is satisfy most of the following would be preferred. If you only satisfy one, well, there might be people better than you, So without reading all of the other parts of the job posting, you can already know that what are your chances of getting this job when you're compared with others? Do you actually have experience in distributed system? Well, of course, these terms may not make sense to you, but for a co-op, there's less requirements, definitely a lot less. And development or research experience with AI frameworks, well, that's actually very hard for a co-op, but this is just an example for how to filter out your jobs. And let's keep going. So there's other institutions or companies that have a different way of filtering out their applicants. And this one in particular, there's actually a lot of technical areas that they're looking for. I've not highlighted every line, but you can see that they're looking for Java, they're looking for Docker, they're looking for Jenkins, they're looking for big data stuff, the Spark, MapReduce, stuff like that. So this means they're actually not really looking for a technical area of expertise. They're actually looking for someone with potential. They're looking for people with a bit of technical background and a lot of learning potential. And there's the opposite of this type of application, and this one looks for no technical aspect. it actually, you can just, every time you see a minimum GPA requirement, you can actually just know this, well, this job is going to filter you by grades. And there's a lot of companies like this. This is Bank of Montreal. Most banks will do this. Most of the insurance companies, the big four, Sun Life, Manulife, etc., will do this most of the time. So they filter the position by your grades, and they see your grade report there. So it's good. It's a good application if you have good grades, but if you don't have good grades, you should look for the technical areas instead. Now, after you've actually filtered out the applications that you are qualified for, now you should look for which ones will help you in terms of building a resume for the future. So first of all, of course, the company, the title, do I want to work for Google? Do I want to work for a small company, but the title is super good? Like I'm a product manager of like a thing that they care about the most, like Chrome or something. But Chrome's part Google. But here's a few examples that I found. Actually, most of it from the previous examples that I've given. So Just Energy Groups would be a small company, but it's a data science job. And Huawei's Technology, which would be a pretty good company for software engineering, if that's the area you're interested in. And of course, Sun Life, good company, very big company, and it's a data platform engineering, which sometimes you have to evaluate the jobs and what your future would be. Next would be a filter by the locations that you want to go to. Are you willing to be in Toronto out of all the places that you can be? Are you willing to like go for the San Francisco, I just gotta be there type of application style? Or maybe you want to go to Vancouver, but is it summer? It's a lot better in the summer. Stuff like that. And in terms of what I've experienced, so building yourself means you have to have a project. And here are the 5 co-ops that I've been through. Peraso, there's actually no big project that I contributed to, which is very annoying when you want to write your resume. When I worked at Relic Entertainment, like, of course, you might have not heard of the studio at all, but they're working on Age of Empires. And I can write that on my resume, and a lot of interviews will just say, well, would you work on Age of Empires? When is it coming out? Stuff like that. When I worked in AMD, RX 570 series, 5700 series is something that I contributed to, the driver of it. And it's whenever people buy graphics cards, they might have heard of this series. It's actually relatively new. And TD, I worked on the TD mobile app and some interfaces and prototypes. So it's a lot easier to, what I'm saying, it's a lot easier to write your resume when you have a big project. And that's very important when you choose a job. And of course, Huawei, I worked on Mindspore, which is similar to TensorFlow. And now, next step, you want to ask around. And this doesn't actually mean you want to just ask your friends and that's it. Actively try to pursue knowledge of which companies are good, which companies are not so good. You should sometimes on a first co-op, you want to prepare for the second. Maybe you want to ask around the coworkers that you work with, see which companies they like more, which companies they like less. When I worked at Relic, one of my coworkers told me that when working at EA is really, really, really annoying. They have a lot of overtime. You're very stressful. All of their AAA games have like really tight deadlines, and you never make it, and it's always extended. When you hear that, do you really want to go to EA on your next co-op? Even if it's an option, do you really want to? That's if so. Actively pursue this type of information. Now, another important aspect is go online and search for it. This is one, the Glassdoor is very important. This is actually researching one of the companies that I've set as an example in the previous portion. So this is a lot of the reviews that I've clipped out of Glassdoor. And you can see a lot of things in common. Says salaries seem to be lower. Well, when you're working for them, their salaries are probably not going to be very high. It says required more overtime. Actually, one of the posts, I've censored the title because it's not very appropriate. And it says, you have to work a lot, work very hard. And combined with being paid very little, doesn't seem like a dream job, right? All right. And the next step, after you've filtered out everything, and you're probably going to be getting an interview. You probably want this job because it's going to make your future a lot better. Now this is your turn to choose. And just to make it easier, here are some of the interview questions that I tend to ask. So what are the company events? What are the team sizes that you work with? What are the some of the flexible work hours that they allow, like going early in the morning or late in the night? I personally tend to ask all of these questions, partly because sometimes I don't usually like to wake up in the morning, so I have to ask flexible work hours. And I'm actually a really tall guy, so I have to sometimes ask for adjustable tables or chairs if they're available. And in general, I really like to end my interviews with whether the interviewer has something they really like about the company. That usually goes to show whether the company is fun to work for. If the interviewer doesn't really like anything about the company, then you can probably tell. If they like everything, they can just go on and on about how they like the company events, how they like the space. Then you tend to probably like the company as well. It's just something to look for. And now to summarize, so first, evaluate yourself. Are you qualified? Next, you want to see if this job will build your resume. Will it make your future easier, better? Then you want to ask around, am I falling into a trap? Is this place going to be very terrible, very not very preferred? And finally, you want to ask some questions in the interview before, just to make sure you're going into the right place. And that's it. Thank you guys for listening.